Hello, my beautiful souls. You are watching my vlog, 10 at Risk 8. I'm your host, 10. I say it like I have a podcast, but I don't. Ba-dum-ba-dum-bum. So, basically, a lot of what my vlog is about is like a lot of spiritual, emotional stuff. But I think there's a lot of like personal stories involved in what I'm trying to go about. I am going to be 37 soon, so I've lived, but maybe not quite as much as some other people, but I have definitely lived. And it's okay if you think I'm a youngin'. I'm totally okay with that, because I do get it. I do understand, though, for some people, when they listen to other people's personal stories, they can't always relate. And so I'm not trying to force a version of events or force people to think how I think. I like having an outlet, a voice. But I also too am a big deep thinker, and I often do always, like, I reflect about my past, and I'll think about things, and I'll understand myself better. But sometimes I'll also to revisit things, and I'll unknow something or unlearn. And if you look at some of my past stuff, like, I've come a long way too, in the sense where I'm a very different person. Like, I don't do tarot cards anymore. I don't do channel messages for anyone anymore. It is for me only when I do that stuff. That's just for me. That's not for you guys. It didn't feel good doing it for other people, but it felt great for myself. And so I was laying down, and I was thinking to myself, like, if I was doing a vlog, what would I talk about? What should my next episode be? And I have been struggling a little bit more with some some really tough allergy stuff, and it kind of reminded me of something something I had to contend with as a younger person, where from a very young age, like as long as I can remember, like for being a young kid to like my mid to late 20s, I struggled with a lot of respiratory health issues. And in my 20s, I wanted to feel really good. I mean, like, I was kind of like going, like, thinking, like, to myself, like, am I going crazy? Like, is this the crazy person going on doing all this stuff? Like, it's all made up in my head. And I used to call myself the mold detector, because if I walked in a space, I would, like, know when there was mold, because I would have an automatic response. I would, have the whole sinus reaction everywhere. The pressure, the buildup, the congestion, not be able to think clearly. I actually got really sick one time because of a workplace I worked in Belmont. I am gonna name names, but not because, or maybe I shouldn't legally. I don't know if I can. But in Belmont, there's a mental health hospital, and they were in full denial that was like, they'd never say, no, we don't have black mold, but they had to fix something in terms of asbestos. So they had to get back into code for asbestos. So I knew, and I was sick a lot there, and I had to eventually leave a job I really liked because I was sick a lot. I'd go into work, I'd be sick, from the building. And so a lot of that context is basically to kind of like, well, how do we contend with ailments? Because a lot of times I've been asking myself, like, how does Buddhism help me in this and that and this and this? And in that time period, I actually got into Buddhism. Granted, I went from paganism to a crisis of faith, and then I got into Buddhism, and then later on I got back into paganism, and the story goes on. But I remember in this time period when I was really struggling with a lot of respiratory illnesses and just, thinking like, am I going to die like this, like just sick, or am I going to live like this for the rest of my life, just constantly sick? I felt so unhappy, so miserable. And I was just hoping that something would save me and solve this problem. And so what eventually occurred was that I did a lot of chanting. I got into yoga, and I was trying to just kind of like come, I don't know, I think I was trying to contend with it, but at the same time I was trying to grasp onto something, some kind of hope, something that didn't make me feel bad. And I remember sometimes, even though I was feeling so sick, I would have a moment of clarity and peace, and like an addict, I wanted more of it, right? But I didn't know how to go about that, right? And so I really, really tried to find inner peace in that time. And I don't think I really found it. I really didn't, I remember feeling, because I had a lot of other problems, not just respiratory illness, but I had a lot of social related difficulties going on. I had anxiety, I had depression, OCD, I had ADHD, and for what I think undiagnosed autism. And all like this new age thing going on. But the signs are there because I know it. I looked it up, and I worked with autistic people for a while, and it kind of made me like question, like, I'm probably level 3. But so when I asked myself, well, how do you find peace with ailments? Like, I'm like, I don't know if I even have a really good answer for that, but I think I do. And I'm trying to get to that part of the story. So even though I really struggled and grasped with finding inner peace, I think it was like I was 23, 25, I'm not sure. I was desperate to sleep one night because I also had insomnia. Out of, oh my God, how many things did I have going wrong with me? And I'm like, I just want to sleep. I got to go to class tomorrow. It's my master's degree. It was middle of winter. There was a bad storm, and I knew it was coming, so I got in to Boston early so that way I wouldn't have to go in, because even though it was a bad storm, there was you couldn't call out. Like, it's like, what? Like, no snow days for us. And so I made it work. I spent the money. And I found Krishna Das, who is not Buddhist. At least I don't think so. I think it's in but regardless of the point, right? But I found Krishna Das, and I started listening to his personal stories of his own spiritual journey, and he had it tough. Like, he had it tough, man. Look up Krishna Das if you ever get a point of it. Like, he has his own podcast and basically tells stories and things like that. And I remember the story, and it runs around in my head like a lot, about this woman that he heard from his teacher, a woman who had a child that died, and she wanted the wise men of the village to save her child. And he said, like, go around and find a home that has not suffered any single death, like no death whatsoever. I think it was rice or a mustard seed, and collect from that, and then come back to me. And she went and visited all the villages, the homes in the village, and no one did not have a death at all. Everyone had suffered death in one way or another in their family. And she became enlightened after that. And I think part of what I'm trying to get around to is that everything is very temporary one way or another. death will come regardless. I know it's so demoralizing, right? But it is. It's actually very freeing if you think about, like, if we can be in the present moment and take a deep breath and find some hope in some kind of way. For me, stories have been this thing that pulls my attention away from my suffering. And so I feel like, when you're dealing with a lot of difficult, painful things, sometimes the only thing you can do in that present moment in time is try to do something that's healthy for yourself. Try to drink more water. Try to do some physical movement as best as you can, but also to try to take your mind away from that however you can. Whatever brings you peace, like, keep doing that thing. I'm not saying one size fits all. Like, you shouldn't just like, oh, she said this, no, she said no. Like, I'm not an LMHC man. That's why the disclaimer is down below. But what I'm saying is, like, because physical pain is so legit and so unrecognized by some doctors sometimes. Like, you go in and we're like whiny women, right? Like, it's that new thing going around, like, women are whiny women. Like, no, we're not. We have legit things. And so we often have to be the own solvers of our own problems because of that. We have been completely left to fend for ourselves, and which is devastating, right? It's so devastating to be the one that you have to fend for yourself. You have to protect yourself. You have to save yourself. How exhausting is that? So if you have a physical ailment and you're trying to get pain relief and doctors say, no, you're going to get addicted to it, or like, I don't know, but like, just find something that gives you peace. For me, when I was in my 20s, it was Krishna Das. It was doing what, some Buddhist stuff, and praying and chanting. Like, believe me, you have no idea how often I was chanting like a mad woman. And I was doing other things that wasn't healthy. So don't think, oh, she was on a kick of healthiness. No, I was just desperate, but what I will say, though, is because of my sheer desperation to escape my pain, it did give me, it's like, I'll try whatever I can to make the pain go away. I tried apple cider vinegar for my sinus infections, which I think did work, actually. I tried a lot of stuff. I did heat therapy on my face for the sinus pressure. I looked like a mad crazy woman coming in to my doctor visits because I had like chronic pain. I had horrible headaches and I had to go to class with headaches. And I'm like, well, hello. And I'm like, but I was like, this is what I have to do these classes. And I dropped out anyways, but so do whatever you have to do, because eventually, this is my theory, that could be wrong, because out of the sheer madness of everything that was in those 20s, something clicked in my brain. Something happened. Like, the respiratory illnesses did go away. And I think it was me removing myself from really toxic environments, because I didn't really connect the dots to where I was at. I was, but Belmont, right? They had the mold and the asbestos. And then I had been living in homes, like, my first apartment, I think, had stuff too, but my parents' house had stuff too. And then when I left there, and I think, I don't know, it felt like there was a clearing in my brain. I don't know, it was so weird. So removing yourself from environments and people is really important that are not conducive to your well-being. Like, I kid you not, because I also got rid of like a bunch of, or I got ghosted by people too, by the way. Don't think like some of it was like, was coming to me, I think. But I just separated from a lot of people that I just either didn't feel like were a match for me, but also too, I think were causing a lot of my emotional upheavals in me, you know? And so I think that someone with a lot of chronic suffering, continuous self-care, doing things that are good for me, like meditation, even this 5-minute meditation, like just continuously, even if it's just like a quick mantra here and there, like just constantly praying or whatever, because here's the thing is, a lot of us, we assume that mental well-being and spiritual well-being have to be rigid and constant. And I kid you not, there's such a toxic mentality about it all, like, and it's a bad habit too. No, like, really what's more important is coming back to it. So Christian Das kind of like, so something he talked about was coming back to the chant. And I kind of changed that rule to be like coming back to center, right? It's very important. It's kind of the same though, but coming back to center is so important. So if like, it's okay if you get busy and distracted, like we're all in samsara together, guys. We're gonna like get fog brain and forget who we are. But what will happen though is you're going to remember. And in that remembering, and to the call to the great source, or the call to yourself and honoring thyself, you're going to be like, you know what? This is a good idea. I should just, I have a moment. I'm going to do child's pose. I'm going to drink water. I'm going to do a quick prayer. I'm going to touch my rosary beads. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. When you come back to center and you have a focus of coming back to center, it becomes just a way of life coming back to center, coming back to you, versus having a rigid system around something. There's a lot of flexibility. There's a lot of grace and self-kindness and self-love towards yourself, because you're going to understand, going like, yeah, I would love to do that thing right now, but right now I have a screaming child who's sick, or right now I have a death in the family. And how are you expected to respond if you have a rigid system up in place where I have to do my yoga 30 minutes a day, every single day? I have to do it this way and that way. And I don't think you can find inner peace with a rigid system anyways, personally. I think coming to center is very gentle. And it's another way of honoring your cycles, honoring you. That's a little deep there, isn't it? Because every day is going to be so different. Every day. I mean, just recently I had like, it was horrible. I had this really horrible headache. And I've been having a kind of like, so downstairs and next door, they have been doing renovations in the apartments, which means they had, there was, let's just say, neurotoxins in abundance, whether it's they were doing epoxy and the fumes went up and then to my room on the other side, and just a lot of stuff. And so I have been just struggling to breathe, kind of almost like how I used to when I was younger. And I'm like, it's like I get this major headache over here, and going like, oh my golly, it's not as bad as it used to be. But how do I get through this? how do I get through a major headache, or how do I get through the pain in my legs and my knees because of the winter chill that's coming about? How do I get through a random surge of like this? I don't know how to explain it, but it's like with what I think. So, how do I get through my ADHD, for instance, when I'm really overwhelmed and I feel this urge to give up? Like, how do I deal with that? And so sometimes the only thing you can do is take a moment to yourself to slow down, take a deep breath, and say, like, this will pass. This is not forever. Maybe I will die in 2 seconds. I'm sorry, I'm morbid, but I am a morbid person. But I find peace in a lot of things that I think not everyone finds peace. I'm okay with temporary, because if it's not forever, then there is freedom. And I'm not talking about physical death. I think that it's very scary when things are out of our control. But if we're gonna surrender and have a sense of release, the only thing we can do is recognize that sometimes there is nothing to do. We can't do anything about it. So if we can't do anything about it, we got to do the next best thing we can do. Maybe have some acceptance. That could be the next best thing. Sometimes the next best thing is calling a friend. Sometimes the next best thing is, again, like using coping skills, like we talked about with a heating pad on the head, drinking water, that kind of thing. Sometimes the next best thing is recognizing what you do have control over. And sometimes the next best thing is trying not to get mad. It happens. And just, recognizing that it is certainly okay not to have power over every little thing. Because if you had control over every little thing, you'd be very exhausted. You'd be way more exhausted than you are right now. And I know that sounds silly and flimsy of an excuse, but if you were God, you would be in hot water right about now. Like, you would be, because there's so much to do. And I'm just gonna kind of wrap up here, because I feel like I feel that ramble coming on me. It's a ramble about to happen. But thank you so much for joining me on this video. I hope it was pleasant. Again, as you know, like, this is a vlog. I switched over to vlogs. I know I've done a lot of different things. Over time, I'm going to get rid of those videos one by one, because a lot of those videos are not in alignment with who I currently am. I generally, the way I see myself is, I'm not here to save you. I'm really a storyteller, but I'm also too very, very spiritual. I'm also too, have had, like, I'm 37, right? So I kind of lived life, which means I feel like I'm called to share some wisdom. Whether it makes sense or not, it's a whole nother story. But there is no pressure to comment, like, subscribe. I'm not gonna actually have pressure on myself, like how often I leave content or anything. I'm not going to do that. I think also too, I might not always allow for comments here and there, just because I'm not going to respond to comments. It's not my job to do that, because this is a vlog. So don't feel mad if I don't. It's nothing personal. It's just that I'm just here to honor thyself. Love and light, mirror me, blessed be, I'm into good health, and bye.